Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk, NFTs, crypto, and Web3. I am your host, Asia the Bird. To have a very special guest with me today, she is a fashion designer and fashion illustrator. Please welcome Wildy Martinez. Hello, Wildy, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
It's,
absolutely. You're most welcome.
yeah, my name is actually pronounced. It's a little bit like tricky because it is spelled out Wildy, but it's actually Wildy.
Oh, Wildy.
Yeah. It's Spanish alphabet, so the I is not pronounced that way. It's just Wildy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Wildy. Yeah, that's really, really cool. But I definitely want to go ahead and ask, tell us where you're from and tell us about your upbringing.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in New York City,
Mm,
in a little place called Washington Heights. And it's a very dominated Dominican population.
mm,
So my parents are Dominican, I'm Dominican American. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s in New York City. So
mm,
it was to me, it was very normal, the
mm.
things that I did growing up and playing in the block and like with the
Right.
fire hydrant on in the summertime, like playing
Mm,
in the fire escape. But the older I got and met other people, right? I
mm.
realized that being a city kid is different.
Right.
And so I grew up in New York City till last a year and a half ago. I moved here. I'm in North Carolina now, in Charlotte metro area. So
Mm,
life I've been in New York City, and
mm.
I have generations. Like, I was one of those people that lived in an apartment building where my grandma lived upstairs and my aunts lived the floor below me. So it was very
Mm,
family centered, and yeah, it was a really fun upbringing. And
mm.
um, since I was really little, I knew I wanted to be some sort of artist.
Right.
And my parents knew that too. I was very always artistic. So they kind of cultivated that
Mhm.
in a really young age. And my grandmother was a designer. So
Mhm.
kind of like, even though she was in Dominican Republic, my mom would always encourage me and say, "Oh, my mom loved clothing too." And
Right.
yeah, at a really young age, at 13, almost, I think 12, 13, I was already taking courses in FIT,
Oh,
um,
wow.
because they had this like it was called Saturday Live program for younger kids, and
Mhm.
I had the privilege of going to Fashion Industries High School at 13,
Mhm.
a few blocks away from FIT. So I kind of been
Right.
knowing that this is what I wanted to do since little. So it's pretty
Right.
cool. Like, I never had to decide. I never had that, like
Mhm.
how a lot of people do, like trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, or like they go to
Right.
school for something and then realize like that's not what they want to do. I
Mhm.
always knew that this is where I wanted to be, and I haven't really had to like navigate as much, of like
Right.
leaving the career and then realizing, oh, I want to be a doctor. Like, I never had that like issue. So
Mhm.
pretty much city kid, outside a lot, and
Mhm.
really close to my family, and with my parents and siblings. So
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really, really cool. But I definitely wanna go ahead and ask, what drew your interest in fashion? Can you name, like, your top 5 designers?
Yeah, I mean, I was really inspired by the OGs like Oscar de la Renta.
Mhm.
He is Dominican, so it's always someone that in our culture we admire a lot, and
Mhm.
love Oscar de la Renta, Carolina Herrera, which is another Spanish designer. Um,
Right.
and I know now it's super controversial, but I love vintage Balenciaga, Cristobal Balenciaga, and like,
Mhm.
I'm very, very inspired by the fashion in like the 1950s, 40s, even 20s, like even
Mhm.
now, just because the Parisian or the couture of fashion like was just such an artistry. And as a student a long
Mhm.
time ago, I really, really love doing draping. So you know how you have the mannequin back there, the dress
Right.
form, and
Yeah.
draping when you create the clothing using fabric on the actual mannequin. And
Right.
back then, I mean, they were designers were doing flat pattern, but it was all done like with the mannequin and the
Hmm.
fabric, sculpting it to do these
Right.
dresses. So people like Urte and Oscar de la Renta, Balenciaga, Chanel, like
Right.
they're all like creating this art on fabric, and I was just
Hmm.
in love with it. So in college, I did everything on the dress form. I love sculpting. Um,
Hmm.
Zach Posen was somebody that I admire a lot because he was like 20, I think in his 20s when he became like he got picked up and became like this contemporary designer, really young, and I
Right.
admire that. Balmain, I mean Virgil, it's like an epic. I mean, such an
Hmm.
artist. So there's so many people that I look up to till this day. But usually, but the fashion from like the couture era in the 1950s and 20,
Hmm.
that era really was what inspired me to look at fashion as art. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so I just love that, especially now with NFTs and even just art in general. There's so many fashion illustrators, right? And I just think it is. Yeah, I just love that I could include that right now in everything that I do. I always have some sort of fashion in it. Um,
Right.
so it's pretty cool that I get to do that still.
Mm. Yeah, it's really, really cool. But I definitely want to switch gears and talk about FIT a little bit more because I know you talked about taking course at FIT at a very young age. But I definitely wanted to touch more on like what's your experience like studying in FIT? And do you recommend people to go to FIT to study
Yeah.
fashion design or expand their knowledge of fashion design?
Right. I think I've said this before, and it always comes out a little bit like I'm not grateful. I am so grateful for what the school and like it's just I think because I was in a city girl and I went
Hmm.
to high school for fashion and then FIT was down the block. In my mind, I thought, oh man, like this is like I want to leave. I want to go out of state. I want to be on
Right.
my own. So I didn't really understood how important it was. I got accepted to FIT. I mean, most students who attend fashion industries. I mean, you have in high school, I was doing fashion shows already, like sewing,
Hmm.
30 pieces. And so usually students get in right away to FIT, but I had actually gotten a scholarship, a full scholarship to go to Syracuse. They
Mm.
were opening up a fashion design program. So I got
Hmm.
and that's where I wanted to go because I wanted to go away and I wanted to leave my parents and I wanted to see other things and
Right.
had as fate would have it, the week before I'm supposed to move into campus, all of a sudden my deposit to my dorm got
Mm.
lost. So I didn't have any room and board.
Mm.
I'm like, what am I going to do? And I didn't want to miss a semester of school. So I said, you know what? I'll go to FIT for one semester and then I'll transfer. And then little did I know, I entered the school, right? It's like people from all over the world, like who were dying to go to the school. And here I am, like, it's my second choice, like I just didn't have I
Hmm.
understand the magnitude and it's pretty normal like when you don't appreciate the things that you have around you, you know.
Right.
So when I entered my first day of classes and I see all these like kids, like so excited and like from all over the country, from
Right.
all over the world, like travel
Mhm.
come to New York City and study fashion design. And I definitely felt like, oh, I have like a leg up because I already knew how to sew and do all this stuff. But by like second semester, I realized like, oh crap, like this is a huge deal. And
Mhm.
I need to stay. If I want to, this is where everything's at. It's New York City. I ended
Right.
up staying and then by like second semester like all these kids that were with or students peers,
Right.
they were killing it. I mean, they were just like killing it and I no longer felt like I had that like one up. I'm like, oh,
Right.
they're good, and I need to like bust my butt now. But it was, I mean, so competitive. I'm a competitive person, maybe more back then than now, but I was super competitive. I wanted to be at the top of my class. The 4 years of FIT, I would say like I did not sleep. Like it was insane. Like
Mm,
I um we have, not only it's a state university, so you have to meet with state university requirements. So not only are you taking your, science, you're taking your social studies, you're taking your history courses, you have to
mm,
also keep up with your major, which for me was fashion design. So then on top of all like my exams, I'm here like sewing, creating my, we had these huge projects like drawing like 500 illustrations in one day. Like it was, the workload was insane. um,
mm.
and I remember this just 4 years just like of not sleeping, but just being enthralled in like everything fashion, like you know
Mhm.
we also wanted to look good. So it was very like, even going to school, you had to look like, have your style and like
Right.
all that. I had amazing, I mean, amazing professors that like changed my life. One professor specifically, she believed in me so much, and I did like a art live class with her, which is when the models are in front of you live and you sketch them. And we
Mhm.
this project, and as a student, you're just doing so much work. Like when I worked in the industry, I realized like, wow, what we did is now, it wasn't like realistic, like sketching
Mm.
so much. Anyway,
Right.
that professor, she ended up taking some of my work and putting it in a gallery and selling them and coming to me with a check. And I'm like, what is this? She's like, oh, I sold your illustrations, the extra ones that you had. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, I want you to know that you can do this. You can sell, like you can sell your work. That's how good you are. And like
Mm.
that work, I had actually had extra saved up of those designs. Those are one of the pieces that I minted as NFTs like 18 years
Ooh.
later. And
Wow.
I do a lot of advocacy and like awareness to vitiligo, which is a skin condition that turns your skin white, like what Whitney Harlow has. I have it. And
Mhm.
if you see my work, a lot of my illustrations have like the white skin or white spot.
Mhm.
And that those illustrations 18 years ago, I actually added white spots to them, and like it was a whole like tribute to
Mhm.
um kind of going back in time and like validating, like even back then, I was good, I just didn't believe in myself, so
Mhm.
it's been a process, but professors for sure.
Mhm.
So I do recommend, if anyone is interested. I mean, I went to FIT, I graduated in 2006, so a long time ago. But it was an experience that yeah, marked me. And
Mhm.
coming out of FIT, like back then, like I got a job right away. Like it was just like flourishing. The industry was flourishing, and any student from FIT, like they'll just like grab you up, and the internship opportunities, it's
Mhm.
incredible. So I do recommend anyone that is interested. I believe it is more of an affordable university because it is state. For me, it was because I was grew up in New York, so it was affordable for me at the time. And yeah, so I do recommend. I don't think there's any. I mean, we have Parsons too, which is a great school, but I had such a fun experience, and I'm still friends with a lot of my college. My best friend, she lives here in North Carolina with me. So these friendships that you make there when you're in the lab at 3 o'clock in the morning sewing, they're like for life. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool because, like, with FIT is one of, like, the premier fashion schools along with Parsons,
Right.
and for me personally, I went to SCAD, so Savannah College of Art and Design in, Savannah, Georgia, which is another premier school, especially they're known for, fashion design, their fashion show, which I did, like, I volunteered, like, all 4 years,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yeah.
seeing all the collections it's really, really cool of what you see, like, there's so many creative people. And when you're
Yeah.
surrounded in that area, of creatives, that are just like you, it's
Right.
like, yo, like I can connect with different people, collaborate and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I look back at like the work that I did when I was in college, which I am planning to mint some of them because I'm like, wow, this is like we had no boundaries. Like as a student, I mean, I had like a weekend job, but all I was
Mhm,
reading was school. Like I didn't have to
mhm,
focus on, now I'm it's a different stage in my life. I'm married, I have a son. So it's
mhm.
not like I could be like, leave me alone. I'm gonna just be sketching all day. But like when you that season of my life, you're like in a like overdrive of creativity. Like
Right,
everything I did was insane. Like I'm like, who cares if this is not realistic? It looks pretty. Like it was just this state of like nonstop creativity and pushing the boundaries. And I remember like, when I had an idea and the professor's like, well, how can you, how are you really going to make it? And I would like prove like I can make this. I can come up with a strategy to have this actually wearable, and just surround it. And that's why I think the culture of NFTs like took me back to that time where, because
mhm,
NFTs now, right? The
right,
NFT community, I'm like, this is FIT all over again. Like so much creativity. I open up my Twitter and it's like my feed is insane with like so many talented,
mhm,
creative people. I see it's like pushing the boundaries, like with different things, with the AI and like traditional artists coming in, like brands partnering with, artists. Like it's just such an exciting thing. And that's why I
right,
love NFTs because I'm like, this is like FIT all over again. Where else can you meet and talk with somebody like even us? Like we didn't know each other, but because of the community, like the connection
right,
happened. Like I know people from all over the world now. It's like I'm stepping into back in time into college, and it's like I feel that like drive of like not I have no boundaries. I could do anything,
right, right.
been man I it's like I feel so alive again because of the community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember a time I did, FIT portfolio day,
Oh.
because I was wanted to major in illustration at FIT, and
Mm,
they was like, "Hey, we looking for some realistic stuff." I was like, "I don't have I don't have any of that stuff," because for me, I've always been, imaginary, imaginative
right.
with my illustrations, things like that,
Yeah.
and I got the SCAD because it gives you more of that creative freedom,
Mm,
and that's the thing that I really liked about SCAD is that not only you're connecting with different creatives and you work with the professors, but also too, you can expand and overextend your creativity. So that's what was really cool about that.
that's awesome. Wow. So wait, are you in school now?
Oh no, I graduated in 2019.
Okay. All right. Oh man. So you're the real world now, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm a licensed cosmetologist too, so I'm into like nail art. So, I do press on nails.
Nice.
So I've been doing that since I was like 14. So yeah, so it's
Wow.
really, really cool to go to an environment. And I went like 2015 to 2019, majoring in illustration and minoring in fibers, which is like, yarn work,
Wow.
crocheting, felting and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Oh man. I love all of it. So awesome. And like
Yeah.
nail art is such a huge thing now. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I grew up in the 90s, 2000s. So, that
Mhm.
acrylic nails were like such a huge thing. I don't know if well, in New York City for sure, nail art was a huge thing. Like I remember getting my acrylics and like the more designs, but I love the movement of it now because it's like an artistry, and like it's not just getting your nail done going to a spa. It's like you like people I know are like, I need my girl, like she's the one that knows how to do my nails, and like how it's becoming such a huge thing, especially with like the music culture. um
Right.
like I remember, even of course I'm going to mention Cardi B because she's from the Bronx. But like even her, I think she had like a show, I don't know, like one of those interviews, and she literally was put her nail tech like on TV, and like that she became super famous for it. So
Right.
I think it's cool how music, fashion, all this stuff like meshes together and how art comes
Right.
out of so that's cool.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. But I definitely want to talk about your brand, Wildflower Fields. So you talked about, one of the interviews that I've seen, you mentioned in an interview that your brand is a creative movement brand that uses art and NFTs to create diversity and empower women to feel free in their own skin. So tell us more about your brand and how important it is to have a representation of, beauty, feminine beauty empowerment.
Right. So my brand is like a year old. It's super new,
Mm,
and I definitely wanted it to be where I can be like partner with other brands. So there's
right.
like thoughtful collaborations are very important that align with this message, because I believe
Hmm.
like the message of self acceptance and self embrace is so important that it can be successful in collaborations. Like I can
Right.
illustrate all I want. I can do talks, but if I don't
Yeah.
like link up with other women, because that's the whole point,
Right.
um, then it's going to be hard to do that. So I'm really
Hmm.
thankful that I've been able to make like 3 awesome connections this year with different clients that are doing the same mission. So
Hmm.
the reason why I started it is because I've mentioned it before. I was diagnosed with vitiligo, which is
Hmm.
a skin condition. Oops, sorry, my camera. It's a skin condition that causes, it's like an autoimmune disease, and basically your melanin, your body thinks that the melanin you're producing is like bad, so it attacks it and it eats it up.
Hmm.
Like my hands are white. Like I think I'm almost like 80% like without melanin already. And
Mm.
in the fashion industry, for I was diagnosed at 26. So I would say like my whole profession in the industry, I have vitiligo. So I have the type that it just spreads gradually. And I remember like all I did was cover it up. Like I was just like, I would have makeup on my hands, makeup on, like for a decade. Like no one knew I had it.
Mm.
And then like maybe like 5 years ago, I'm like, okay, I don't, when I got pregnant with my son, I'm like, I can't be wearing all these creams because then I'm gonna be holding him and it's like
Right.
all this foundation on him. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna put it in my hands anymore, and I'm just gonna like not talk about it, pretend I don't have it. And but everything I did like revolved around my skin. So um
Mm.
summer's coming. I'm gonna have to buy like long sleeves but airy. Oh, I
Mhm.
can go to the pool. Oh, I'm gonna like I would just hide because I didn't want people to ask me about my skin. And I
Right.
was like the culture I grew up in is very like toxic in a way that it's about like how you look to others and how do you look to society and like keeping up with the Joneses, right? And like
Right.
all this stuff. So I have that pressure of like, man, I have to look perfect and I have to be perfect, but I have this skin condition that is
Mhm.
hard to hide. Um, and then I would say 2 years ago, I don't know. I had like a moment, one of those moments that everyone has, where I said, "This is enough. Like I don't want to like hide." So I started to share my story, and it just so
Mhm.
happened that a year later, like NFTs came about. So I started using NFTs as a way to share my story and like kind of like a coming out of like this is who I am. So I
Right.
started putting my vitiligo on the models, on my illustrations, um,
Mhm.
more open about it. And just the response from the community, from women, was so overwhelming that I knew that this is like my purpose is to like say like, why do we have to follow the beauty standards of society?
Right.
Why do we have to put makeup on? I mean, if you want to put makeup on, fine. I have, makeup on right now, but like, why does that have to like justify us or like, um, why does the outside appearance have to, matter? And what,
Right.
so kind of starting these conversations, And then that being kind of the anchor in Wildflower Fields is like, what can we do as women to promote this message of self acceptance and self embrace, and like being who you are, not feeling shameful for
Right.
weight or your hair. Even my hair was a huge thing. I have natural curly hair. I just have it tied up right now. But it took me a long time to just say embrace my curls, because I grew up,
Mhm.
I mentioned, in my culture is a lot of colorism. That's another subject that I like to like talk about through my illustration. So
Mhm.
I grew up where it was like, oh, why is your hair like that? Like you should straighten it, or you're gonna go to the wedding with curly hair. Are you,
Mhm.
kind of the message that my hair wasn't good enough. Then my skin started to turn white. It's like, oh my gosh, now I'm really not good enough. So it was kind of like, um and I want to say that it's like a evolving story, because first I started to
Mhm.
talk about colorism, about my hair, about my skin, and then I'm like, okay, let me talk about vitiligo. And I'm like, okay, what's how more vulnerable can I be? And sometimes
Mhm.
I feel like, oh, I see the conversations around this topic being talked about even more, but the more I share, there's always a response. I remember, like, even with the NFT community, we do so many spaces and talks, and I talk a lot about it. I talk about vitiligo, and I mean, I'm telling you, there's going to be one or two people that grab the mic and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have vitiligo," and
Mhm.
I'm not there yet to share it, or I'm not there yet, but it feels so comforting to know that like you're doing it, and you're like representing us. So that's how like it started, and yeah, I'm super excited to keep going and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool because I think beauty representation is very, very important, and like how you said, like, the Europeanized standard of beauty, is pushed so much, into society. You know what I mean? And look at with now, like especially within fashion, women from different, different shapes and sizes getting
Right.
represented in fashion shows and, like different skin tones, how you said women with vitiligo, women with albinism, men
Yeah.
with albinism, so it's
Yeah.
really cool to see.
Yeah. And there's more like to be done for sure.
Mhm.
Because one of the things I like to say too, or like that I think about is, I love when I see models that look like me. Um,
Mhm.
but obviously no one's gonna look like me or like you. But it's also kind of
Right.
comforting when you hear someone is that you can relate to, that looks like you. It like hits
Mhm.
a different side, because that kind of makes you feel like, oh, I can do it too.
Right.
Obviously, like, Winnie Harlow, she's like an amazing spokesperson and she's out there. But then I'm like, but she's also like a supermodel, and I'm like a regular person. So I can relate to the
Mhm.
vitiligo, but I also want to see real women. And not that she's not real, but like um, that are not in the fashion industry know that they can also be there too. That they don't have to have the standard of height, the standard, because we just love
Right.
different standards for everything.
Right, exactly.
Who's making the standard? So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
if I can make someone feel seen and like, like they can relate, then that's like a win, such a big win for me.
Mhm. Yeah, right, absolutely. But also another thing I want to touch on in the same interview, you also mentioned in my career in the fashion industry, though successful, it also came with many challenges, mainly because of the work ethics my immigrant parents instilled in me. Their hope and dreams of having successful children in America created a certain pressure to excel. So tell us more about that, but also tell us about the obstacles you had to face in the professional and in your personal life.
Right. Yeah, so for sure, as many like immigrant kids, there is this kind of, either they say it or this kind of just unspoken, pressure of like making it in America, and being successful. And though my parents are always supportive of my career, I think I just put so much pressure in like excelling, because I wanted to make them proud, that like it just led to just I worked really hard, but
Mhm.
I also poured so much of myself into like
Right.
the industry with just ridiculousness of work hours and like really trying to like climb. So that was one aspect of it, was just like me, my work ethics always been like, you're the first one in, the last one out, do more, do more, do more. But at the same time, I didn't advocate for myself, um, in
Right.
regards to pay, in regards to boundaries, in regards to like limits and like knowing my worth, because that
Right.
unspokenness of like, you're gonna, don't get in trouble, don't cause ruckus in your job. You gotta, you know,
Right.
make sure you have that stability, right? Because stability,
Hmm.
when you're like a first generation, like stability is such a huge part where,
Right.
and I'm talking about for myself, like having that job
Hmm.
was like the most important thing for my parents. Like if I lose a job, oh my gosh, it's such a huge thing. It's not so much of risk taking, it's about stability, you know? And I think because of that, like I struggled a lot to like advocate for myself for equal pay, like you know, finding out that my, you know, male counterpart, like, you know, was getting paid way more than I was, even though I was, you know, working way, had more accounts, had more responsibilities, and kind of like having to like fight for myself to get raises, get promoted, and
Hmm.
you know, without giving out too much information, but I do feel like unfortunately it was like I didn't understand why I was being overlooked for like a promotion, or until I realized, oh, there is no minority in a director role here, you know. So that's like a huge challenge. Like I hate that I need to like talk about it, but it is real. um
Mm.
I had to like fight really hard to get like the pay that I deserved. You know, and I had to be ruthless. And I think it took me a long time to understand that doing that was actually an act of self-love and valuing myself. I thought that if I was like going against my authorities or my bosses, that I was, you know, being unruly, because you know, again, like I was raised like, you be obedient, listen to authority, listen to your bosses, just make sure you keep that job. But I realized that that also affected how I valued myself. And it took me a long, you know, just even recently to understand like, whoa, like people are going to come to me because I'm talented. And if they're coming to me, then they have to pay me what I deserve. So I think
Right.
that's like a huge thing for women, like for creatives to like price, give your price is such a huge thing, because we're
Mhm.
not, we struggle with understanding that we have value and that we are giving,
Right.
we're actually providing a service that we deserve to get paid for at this amount. So those were my
Mhm.
challenges, was like just the, unfortunately, the racism that happens still to this day, and the pay gap. For sure, equality in the fashion industry, it's like a huge thing. Equal pay, and like unfortunately it's still happening. But we have to risk, we have to take some risk for the sake of like um valuing ourselves, and start putting those boundaries, and work for companies that see us, they're going to pay us, and they're going to want to see
Mhm.
us grow. So those were, that was challenging, was like kind of like, yeah, the industry, especially in the beginning. I mean, I worked for companies, I would be there till like midnight, you know, like
Mm.
trying to like, you know, prove my worthiness, or like
Right.
want to make it, you know. And there's so many stories that my friends, my coworkers, and I can share about like just crazy industry stuff that happens when you're young and you're just trying to make it and trying to like climb that ladder. Yeah, you just do things that when you're older, you're like, what? Why would I ever let that happen? Like, why would I, you know, not go home like to sleep? So yeah, so it's wild. It's so wild.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to. This actually makes me switch gears and talk about the 48 laws of power. So, there's a huge relationship between art and fashion, and of course, that helped shape the 48 Laws of Power, which is created by the iconic Robert Greene. 48 Laws of Power is the most iconic book, but I definitely want to get into in regards to what have you learned in regards to treachery in the fashion industry.
Can you give me an example?
So, like with the 48 Laws of Power, I don't know have you read the book
Mm-mm,
before? No.
no.
So
So I'm lost.
essentially,
Now I'm like, oh my gosh, should I? I have need to read it now.
yeah. So the 48 Laws of Power, it's a book created by Robert Greene. So it really entails, like, from his experience going to art school and seeing like the treachery within art school. So he made this book in regards to how to protect yourself within life and business, especially being in the art industry. So
Yeah.
just talking about in regards to you being in the fashion industry, what are some things that you've learned, like just in regards to just treachery in the fashion industry?
Um, for sure, read your contract. Like,
Mhm.
create your own contract if possible. Negotiate. Um, and I know it sounds so like lame what I'm about to say, and it's like so lame, but it literally has saved my life so many times. Like, put everything on email, and this is even corporately. This is not even fashion,
Mhm.
like industry. Only just even for like whoever is gonna be working corporately or for a small business, especially if you are like even a small business, which is harder because you're thinking, oh, I'm a small business. I'm just, well, one person. Let me just pick up this phone call and try to do this confirm by. Have everything written down because you just never know where you that like email that you saved. Sorry, I keep banging on my table. That email that you saved is going
Mhm.
to like save you. And
Right.
I would say like art is beautiful, fashion is beautiful, everything is beautiful, but we're all humans creating these beautiful
Mhm.
things or in these beautiful things, and humans are human. It's like some people are really kind, and some people have agendas. There are more like selfish agendas, and
Right.
with humanity comes faults, and like
Mhm.
keep that in mind. Like, okay, that person is nice, but you still need to be professional and keep and put it on the email. Like have
Mhm.
proof of everything and advocate for
Mhm.
yourself. Um yeah, just protect yourself with just written stuff because it is even like I was hired to do like an illustration for someone, and I'm thinking, oh, this person, I'll do it, no contract, I'm trusting. Yeah, no, I didn't get paid. Like it doesn't like it doesn't matter like how nice or who the company is. Just make sure that charge your upfront before you even start, and then
Right.
you turn it in when you get the rest. And
Mhm.
it just in the industry, um, I would say for sure that I had this rule that I kept that I would just follow for myself, and I had this standard of like presentation, um, and I will always turn in a project when I felt like it was up to that standard that I have put for
Right.
myself. Um,
Mhm.
so like do everything excellently. Don't half-ass anything, but
Right.
also know your worth. If I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's
Mhm.
like just advocate for yourself. Don't assume anything that like the other person is for you or is going to help you. Like it's cutthroat, and most of the time the higher ups are just taking care of their own bag. I know it sounds so ghetto, but it's true.
Yeah, 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 most definitely, and especially within the creative field,
Yeah.
we live at a time now where people try to scam you, people trying to steal your ideas, your artwork, or whatever it is, people are just trying to get a quick buck.
Right. And having integrity does come a long way. Like
Right.
um I always, again, like I love working. I love um being able to like solve a problem and like, but
Right.
one of my favorite things to do is like if I have a client or a brand and they're like, we want to create this fashion, this collection. One of my favorite
Mhm.
things to do is to hear their ideas and then boom, deliver it. Like, is this what you want? And then
Mhm.
kind of helping them achieve that. That's like one of my things, the things that I told my husband, I'm like, I really love doing that. I love working for myself, but I love being able to get others, like someone's idea and like show it to them in a new way and like a next level, and they're like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what I wanted. I just didn't know how to put it into, visualize or put it into a board. And I love doing that for people.
Right.
um but I also think that working like with integrity, like integrity is like when no one's looking, right? That if somebody, is watching me and I don't know and I'm working, that they're seeing like, wow, this girl is like honest, and she's doing her best. She's not like, having that integrity is so crucial in the industry, because what happens is, when you have that, even when someone wants to like, you know mistreat you, your integrity is what defends you, because there's so many people looking at that, that
Right.
when somebody tries to call you out and say like, oh no, she's this and that, that integrity has hold you up, where you have witnesses that say, no, actually she's a straight arrow. And like, so having
Right.
integrity is such a huge thing that has like literally helped me till this day. And I'll give you like an example. I
Mhm.
worked in the company for a long, like, a long time. They like brought me, they helped me be a designer. They kind of like in the beginning of the years kind of showed me everything and all that. And but I was tired. It was like, I was young and I was like working long hours and I wanted to try something different. And I decided to like give in my notice. And it was really hard for
Mhm.
them to let me go. And I remember in my head, I said, if it was somebody else, they'll just get up and leave.
Mhm.
It was a little bit toxic. They would just get up and leave and walk away, which is completely
Mhm.
fine. But I knew, I'm like, I want to leave, but I want to leave everything in its place, so that when I walk out of here, whoever comes and takes over, they're going to be able to carry on and like, continue doing. And that decision,
Mhm.
not getting up and saying, you know what, whatever, I'm quit and leave, and like of
Mhm.
staying and putting everything in its place, that
Mhm.
act, till this day, like that director is like, oh, like still remembers me, like you left everything so organized. You like, I can't believe, like it's a, because that's integrity. Like I didn't do it for them, I did it for my name. I don't want
Mhm.
anyone to, and that's something like in the industry that you have to protect, because it's a small world and people are gonna like, everything connects in the fashion industry. Like these companies are all interlocked, and like you don't want to leave a bad taste in one company's mouth or one director and then like burn the bridge. So I don't like to burn bridges.
Mhm.
Even if you treat me like SAI, I don't know if I could curse here. If you treat me like crap, like I am not gonna bow down, and I'm not gonna like, I'm gonna keep it cool, and I'm gonna smile, and I'm gonna do the best, because this is my work. So I always had that like mindset, especially in the industry.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, most definitely. But I definitely want to switch gears and talk about that you're one of the founding members of the Darling Society. So
Yes.
tell us more about that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I got this opportunity, which is like a dream come true. So the Darling
Mhm.
magazine, you can check them out, Darling, on their Instagram. They are a very innovative fashion magazine or beauty magazine, lifestyle magazine, and they're well
Mhm.
known. I think they got like an award for being the first magazine not to Photoshop or retouch their models. So the whole
Mhm.
movement is about self acceptance and helping women embrace their beauty and embrace who they are and embrace their uniqueness. So they reached out to me
Right.
they saw what I was doing with Wildflower Fields, and they brought me on, especially because I'm in the fashion industry, and we're launching a clothing brand. So
Mm,
23. So it's
that's really
a
cool.
brand, and it's so cool because they're capsule wardrobes. So I think it's like 23 pieces per season. And we are launching an ambassadorship program. So it's 500 ambassadors. And the whole, like, I would say, DNA of the brand is not beautiful clothing, right? Is not just that. It is going to help women feel good, look good, but it's to cultivate community within women.
Right.
And they're known for these events called the Darling Dinners, which are these transformative dinners that leave you. I mean, I attended one, I attended a retreat too, and it just um, helps women like value themselves and value each other,
Mhm.
especially culture where we tend to be tearing each other apart, and like social media doesn't help. We're comparing ourselves to one another. But this is cultivating a community within women to host events in their home, to talk about
Yeah.
clothes, to have dinners, to have intentional relationship with other women. So it's an incredible, opportunity, and I'm like so excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. Now, I know you've mentioned throughout the interview about how you're involved with NFTs and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's really, really cool. So I definitely want to, I wonder like who first exposed you to NFTs? Like, did anyone tell you about it? Did you run into NFTs? Like, how'd you first get exposed into it?
So I, so first, the first time I heard about it, it was a cousin of mine. She's an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And she said, there's this thing called NFTs. And I'm not sure if she heard it from Gary Vee. But she mentioned it to me, and she was like, "Yeah, you could just put photos up, and then you get paid for it." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah, I'm like, "What do you mean photos?" Yeah, you can even put a picture of your son. And I'm like, "Why would I put a picture of my son?" She's like, "Yeah, and people just buy it." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm thinking like only, I went to that way. I'm like, I understand like what she was
Right.
saying, but then I kept like just hearing it from different people. Then my
Mhm.
husband, so my husband is a musician, and
Mhm.
he got into it. He started doing music NFTs and like binaural sounds, and like he's like, I think you should get into it because like you're like an illustrator, and like you can mint your work. Um, so I'm like, I need to do research. So I ended up joining Crypto Club, which is a community in Slack led by a friend of mine who was an ex Wall Street guy and knows everything about crypto and stocks. So I first went into learning about crypto in
Right.
itself, like the technology part of it, through
Mhm.
this group. And then I ended up going to taking courses in the Udemy app. Is it Udemy? Oh,
I'm not
Udemy.
sure.
It's like a university. It's like a college courses, but it's in an app. And I
Mm.
think the creator of Beeple or somebody, he was like the master teacher. So I
Mm.
learned that, and I was like a month of no, like I couldn't sleep. I was just going down this weird tunnel of NFTs, and then I got like a little like a marketing ad on my Instagram of a NFT marketplace called Voice.com. Um,
Mhm.
and Voice.com is an NFT marketplace, but they help traditional artists, they onboard traditional artists. It was crypto optional. People could purchase their NFT using a credit card. Excuse me. So I'm like, you know what? I had no gas fees to pay. So I'm like, let me just do one and see. And then I minted the first one, and I was featured right away on their website and on their social media. And
Wow.
I sold right away. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And back then I was doing digital illustrations, prints. So I was selling my digital files for like $25, like I'll send you the file and you print it yourself, like Etsy kind of. And I would mark them at 25, and then I'm like, oh, let me mark it at 50 to see. And it sold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
Mm,
So I ended up adding a series that I did called 2020, which is when I talked about
mm,
colorism. And I ended up like selling. And then, it was just so much work though, like to mark, the NFT marketing as a creative. I don't know if you've seen it. It's insane. You're like tweeting, you have to do, then at that time it was bare bull. So we had like the shill spaces, first
mm.
you're talking about your art, then I'm also getting interviewed because I'm new in this platform. So I'm in podcasts, and it's like a full-time job of just talking, promoting your work.
Right.
Um, so I remember I had a moment where I was like, man, I'm a woman of faith. So I like to like pray and like, I'm like, God, like, if you want me to do this, I need a sign because this is too much work and it's literally a full-time job. And that
Mm,
night, somebody purchased my NFT and they
mm,
put it in the secondary market so I had listed the NFT for $50 USD.
mm,
The buyer bought it, the collector bought it for 50, and they ended up selling it, putting in the secondary market for $1,600. Somebody
mm.
bought it at 1,600. So I woke up and I'm like, I had $400 in one, like overnight. To me, that was like a lot coming from $25 print to on secondary sales only. Um,
Wow.
so I'm like, oh my God, okay, I guess I should, now that I was doing it for the money, but as an artist, you're like, this is so much time. So I need, like, obviously, to get compensated for all the work that goes into being an NFT artist. And
Mm,
I just kept going, kept going. And then I did a series called Fashionably Late on OpenSea, uh,
mm,
which was all like fashion, like street fashion.
mm,
And that led me to the fashion community. So Eyes of Fashion, interviewed me, and all these other fashion NFT people kind of started to know who I was. And I'm like, oh my, I didn't know there was fashion, because NFTs were so digital and like abstract, or obviously the Bored Apes and then CryptoPunks and all this stuff that
yeah, moonbirds.
yeah, I didn't really see, fashion art. Now, it's a huge thing. Now, fashion, NFTs and digital fashion is like a wave. I believe is the next thing. I believe
Mm,
that we're going to be in the metaverse more, and that people are going to need to want to know what to wear, and we're going to be designing for your avatars. So
mm,
yeah, I think it's like amazing. So that's how I started. And then I kept going. I kept pushing myself as an artist. I'm like, okay, I love fashion, but now how can I incorporate deeper like conversations around beauty and fashion? So that's how like it started evolving into like the message of self-embrace. Um,
mm.
and yeah, I'm still going. I'm doing more collaborations now, which I'm super excited. Like I said, like with other artists. I definitely want to have VR, AR animation into my stuff. I
That'd
definitely
be cool.
like 3D and like fashion and avatars, and so it's been like it's just such a crazy place because it moves so fast, and then there's like
Mm,
many things you could do, with it.
mm. Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely also get into like a little bit of the metaverse because I know you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Do you think that within the metaverse, especially with AR and VR, especially with with NFT, metaverse fashion, do you think it'll heavily impact the fashion industry?
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. Not only so
Hmm.
I am working with a brand that I am onboarding them to Web3, and I had to like do a lot of research and figure it out. Like, okay,
Hmm.
know, what can we do in the metaverse that we can't do in real life? Because that's number one, like a solution um,
Right.
to many problems. Like obviously, people talk about sustainability a lot, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sustainable because you're creating clothes in the metaverse, but you want to wear real clothes too. But then I realized that the generations, like my nephew who's 12, all he does is like he's on playing, and he's in the
Right.
meta games, and
Mm-hmm.
the future, like we are gonna be more time in the, it's just gonna happen. But for
Mm-hmm.
brands, the cool thing is like the technology of what the blockchain provides,
Right.
with not only obviously your right as a creator, you the ownership, all that stuff, which is amazing. This is why I joined. But like
Mm-hmm.
what people are doing with membership programs through NFTs. Like I know the brand, even H&M joined Web3, Nike, Adidas,
Right.
they're all joined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Adidas is providing digital NFTs, but they're also providing like membership and loyalty programs,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the next level of being like in an inclusive club, exclusive club, and like
Mm-hmm.
what you have access to being a member of the community. So
Right.
I think the technology backside of it with membership programs, even what Starbucks is doing, is going to change everything, because it's just easier to be accountable for and easier to track. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Easier to bring in new members, and you want to be a part of it, like, so I think that's changing. And then the metaverse, with using like Decentraland or even Spatial at IO, just the
Mm-hmm.
ability to meet up, in the metaverse, and host your meetings there or host your events. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I went to a Vogue Singapore metaverse event, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I was able to buy an outfit that was designed by the fabricant, and in partnership with Real Player One, and I had my dress on, and I was
Mm-hmm.
at a party, and everyone's like, oh my God, I love your dress, as an avatar. And I'm like, this is so cool. This is like better than Zoom, So I
Mm-hmm.
think just like there's so many different things you can do with the new technology, and the different technology. You have blockchain, you have the metaverse, so it's just
Mm-hmm.
different. Obviously NFTs, we have apps to help you
Mm-hmm.
show proof of assistant that, is going to change the way ticketing is. So I'm bullish, obviously, on Web3.
Mm. Yeah, that's really, really cool. But I definitely want to get into in terms of having a balance. So it's very common with professionals that, people, in the professional world struggle with having that balance between professional and personal. In your experience within being in the fashion industry, do you think there's such thing as having a balance?
No, no, not at all. I don't think there's. I think I had mentioned it in one of when I was interviewed for like motherhood and fashion, and like how do you balance that? And I'm like, there's no balance. There's no balance. It's just like discerning what is a priority, like at that time. Um,
Right.
because you're not gonna have equal balance. Requires like a balancing of the scale where they're both like, I'm out of frame. Here you go. Like even. And that's not achievable. Like especially as like a parent. Like if my son gets sick, like he was sick a few weeks ago, like he is the
Mm-hmm.
priority. The scale is going to tip to him, you know.
Right.
So what I would say is I remember feeling guilty trying to balance my life earlier in my career when I was at the design studio day and night, and I would feel like that guilt, like, oh, I should be here, I should be with my family, or I should be
Right.
choosing them. But in hindsight, I'm like, that was the season. And I probably would have had more fun if I didn't try so bad to have balance. I think
Mm-hmm.
I would have just said, I'm 20, I'm not married, I'm single, I'm in New York City, I'm in the fashion industry. Let that be the season and let me go in it hardcore, and not
Right.
having to feel guilty for not like spending time with the family, or, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is a little bit different. I think in that going into NFTs, um, in the beginning, when we were like bull market, it
Right.
was hard because I'm like, oh, like I was on all day, like on Twitter. It was
Hmm.
insane. And
Right.
at that time, my son wasn't even in school because it was like
Mm.
summer break. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
so I remember always having like, in spaces and watching him. And it was hard. It was hard. And now I feel like I have a rhythm because he's in school. Now I work from home. I get to divide my time. And now I'm not so like consumed with like, oh, I have to be on. Like,
Right.
especially with the conversations around mental health that's happening
Hmm.
in the NFT space. I think we realize, oh man, this is not normal for us to be connected 24/7 on our phones. I think even my hands were hurting me because I haven't from being like this all day, like holding my phone. I'm like, I don't think my hand is supposed to be like in a claw shape. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. It's basically just discerning what needs a priority at that time and like making a decision. And I heard like successful people know how to make decisions quickly, and it's kind of like assessing your life and saying, okay, I'm going to focus on this. My scale's going to be tipping this way for this thing. But for sure,
Hmm.
it's hard to have that if we're not like taking care of ourselves, like get,
Hmm.
having some time off of social media. Today, this morning, I went to like a cryotherapy, was just like you go into a cold room, you know? So I did that. I'm like, I'm gonna get away and like, and however you wanna, um, however your mental health, do it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, right, most definitely. And I like how within my generation, and within today's time, because so much stuff has been going on, mental health is like the big, talk because it's very, very important, especially, saying like, hey, it's okay to talk to somebody, find somebody professional, seeking therapy, and doing
Right,
different ways to really maintain your mental health.
right, right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think so I'm a elder millennial, and I think we just focus I don't know, I want to speak smart for myself, but I was very like work was life, and
Mhm.
yeah, like I definitely had fun, but we didn't question like, is this unfair, or is this affecting I actually, when I was in my 20s, that's when I got diagnosed with vitiligo, and my health was like so bad because of the
Mhm.
anxiety with work. And I actually ended up quitting that job just to like get better, because
Mhm.
I had severe anxiety. Like I had ulcers, like it was just so bad and stressful. And
Mhm.
I think that because the conversations around mental health weren't happening as much, I didn't understand.
Mhm.
I didn't make the decision to put myself first before I got so sick, if that makes any sense. Where now, like, literally, I'll go into Twitter and there's like a mental health chat happening somewhere. And I think it's like pretty awesome that that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, right. Absolutely, most definitely. But let's go forward into the future. Let's say 10 years from now. What would your future look like 10 years from now?
Woo. I see myself having my company being super successful and having like really really amazing partnering brands um, under my Wildflower Fields LLC, like having like these epic brands that are also
Right.
flourishing. um,
Mhm.
that's what I see professionally. I see myself in 10 years being like a voice in my community, like being known for like, oh, she's this person that is inspiring women to feel good in who they are. Like I kind of want to be like an advocate for that and have in 10 years kind of that my reputation of being like, oh, you go to her if you want to, if your brand is about that, like go to her. Like the same way I'm partnering, like, Darling Society is to me like, oh, that's that brand. I want that to
Right.
be me in the future, like, oh, and I always care for like younger girls. I always care. Back in the day, I was a youth pastor, so I have so much love for young people, and I would love to have
Mhm.
an organization like part of Wildflower Fields is in the future. I would love to have Wildflower Girls, which is an organization that's pro young girls to help them feel beautiful and loved, and kind of hosting these events for the girls and the moms
Right.
um, to like learn about like identity and like being comfortable in who they are, knowing that they're beautiful, because it's really hard when you're little at that age and no one's told you that you're beautiful. Like I want to be able to host these events and kind of have these retreats with young girls to help them with their self-esteem and like anti-bullying. So that's in like 10 years where I'm going to be doing annual retreats with all these little girls, and merchandise. And I
Mhm.
definitely want to have, I still dream of having my own clothing brand.
That'd be
Or
cool.
empire. Like I always know I'm gonna have do that, soon. And yeah, so I see a really great company that does many things, all surrounding beauty and like women empowerment.
All right, that's really, really amazing. But last but not least, where can people find you on social media, and how can people support you and your work?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Wildy underscore Martinez. I'm on Instagram. I try to be more active on there. At the Wildflower Fields. I do have my link tree. Maybe you can like link it somewhere after this video, where I had all my
Mhm.
marketplaces. But um,
Mhm.
I am on Foundation. I have a collection happening there. And I'm on OpenSea. I'm also on Tezos, actually, which is really
Mhm.
cool. I did a collaboration with my 5-year-old son to promote creativity in children. And I took his abstract paintings and I added some fashion girls on them. And we sold out two. We have two more. So yeah, I'm selling
Congrats.
platforms, and I'm debuting on Known Origin um,
Mhm.
this on Christmas. So I'll be dropping a new collection. And then, if this video gets out before then, this Friday, Bay Area, I'm going to be exhibiting my work on walls. I'm partnering with three spaces, and they printed out my NFTs in these huge canvases, and they're going to be
Wow.
an event, and it's Web 2 meets Web 3. Super cool. And yeah, they're amazing. They're gonna be showing my work in different hotels and Airbnbs. Um,
Mm.
they're basically connecting the real world to the digital world by putting artist NFTs on the walls. So that's this Friday, Bay Area. I believe that's California. Yes. So if anybody's from Cali, please look it up. And I should put that on my link tree so it's easy to find.
Yeah, that's absolutely cool. Well, thank you so much for jumping onto the show. Your work is absolutely great. I think I'm freezing a little bit. Am I freezing?
Yes. And
Well,
you're good.
I think it's picking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on for 1 second. Let me just see. Where's my? Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm moving. I'm
Yeah,
moving.
you look good. Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Wildy, for jumping onto the show. Your work is absolutely amazing. I love what you do and what you stand for, especially with women's empowerment. Especially beauty empowerment. I think it's something that's very, very important and it's very much needed. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, yeah, you're most welcome. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, follow me on my social media platforms and visit my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews involving Web3, NFTs, crypto, and the metaverse.